Hey guys, welcome back to the Casual Word and Casual Word Radio, where we continue our endeavor to change the world one word at a time. I'm your host, Langley, and I'm very excited to have Anthony Jones with us today. Anthony, great to have you, man.
It's great to be here, man. I've been watching the show a while, just wondering when I finally got a chance to get on. I'm
Oh,
excited.
yeah, definitely. So, for you all, just to give you a little background, Anthony and I have really just connected over social media, probably over the last year, I would say, just
Mhm.
kind of keeping each other uplifted and encouraged. And then he put together a group for parents to come out and bring their kids together, kind of a more of a faith-based kind of outing. Got to bring my son out, and we really got to connect. And I'll let him tell you more about that. That was a very unique experience. He had like a scavenger hunt. So yeah, man, take it away and just tell us more about that event, and we'll get more into it.
Okay. Well, the thought behind this, it was kind of a parenthood like life group. As parents, a lot of times, like I'm a single dad myself. My son, he's 10 years old, um, and our kids got along awesome, which I love so much. Um, but mainly, like I said, parents, we don't have a lot of, at least as Christian parents, we have a lot of healthy ways that we can kind of get out um, and get to kind of like just be ourselves and not be as such work minded and all the other fun stuff. So I decided I wanted to do a group, just kind of help and just kind of get together, just chat and talk. But also, still want to have I have my son with me all the time, and I wanted our parents to encourage not just drop our kids off at the babysitter or grandma's house. You know what I mean? Um, Nothing wrong with that, but bring them with you, enjoy those moments. So we had like a scavenger hunt at Sugar Hollow that the kids originally was supposed to be like the parent and the child could do together, but the spirit was moving that day, I believe, and all the kids just kind of
Yeah.
like joined forces together and just wanted to knock it out together, which was amazing to see. And it gave us an opportunity as parents to kind of get to know each other a little bit more and just maybe talk about our struggles, maybe talk about what our wins are during that week or the weeks that those are.
Yeah, and I think it's, I think back on that day, and we talked about it some. It was such an amazing experience to see the kids just take off, and it was like, hey, you're a kid, I'm a kid, let's go do kid things and go out here and
Yeah.
knock the scavenger hunt out. And it was such a beautiful moment because as we have seen in our culture, and as we have seen as adults and things that we experienced, it was a beautiful thing to see the innocence of the children and the acceptance of the children. It had nothing to do with anything other than, oh, we're all in the same space, we're all trying to accomplish the same goal, let's do it
Mhm.
together. And so that was a beautiful thing. So I definitely want to say hats off to you for putting that together, and the spirit definitely moved and led. What was it, that was it because you have your son quite often that kind of led you into that? Because one thing you said that I really like, and we'll get more into that, was that it was something that you and your son could do together with other parents and their children.
Yeah. We kind of led up to that mainly, like I said, a lot of the times I just kind of, as parents, we get down on ourselves because if you're working, or if you're regular working, now as COVID's a little bit different. Still praying for those who don't have a job and stuff yet. But if you're actually working, it's regular 9 to 5. Only thing you really got the kids got to do is like they're going to school. By the time they get home, it's time to feed them and showers and put them to bed. And those realistically, you might get a 3 4 hours really with them, trying to figure out who they are as people. They grow up in front of you, but we realize they grow up so fast. So I wanted to do that, but also I wanted to be an adult too. I'm a big kid at heart.
Yeah.
I want to get out there and play. I miss my son all the time with sports. I told him, Dad, still got it. My body tells me sometimes otherwise, but
You and me
just
both.
kind of, I know there's more like-minded parents like myself, and maybe not even activities. Hey, let's get a bite to eat. Let's go get some ice cream. And like you said, and sometimes as parents, we don't have a lot of people to vent to. And I say vent, kind of Bible text about having wise counsel among that, who you kind of confide into. Um, excuse me. And I thought that was a great way to even get to meet new people, um, as well as kind of hey, let's catch up some guys on some time. Let's catch up sometime. Excuse me.
Well, and I think it was well orchestrated, because parenthood is something that I'm obviously an advocate for. A lot of the books that I'm working on now, the devotional that I have out, the book I'm working on currently, is specifically targeted toward men. But then this new book, one of the new books, is specifically targeted toward men being better fathers, better role models, and better parents all around. And so, one thing that I really enjoyed, and it's just for transparency's sake, was it was very nice to see a group of young African American men with their kids.
Absolutely,
I think
absolutely.
that was a huge testament to the success of that day. I think, and it was obviously, God led and God ordained and designed. And, as I looked around and realized it was just guys with their kids, I think that was something that was, you just don't see that,
Yeah.
especially in Bristol in the Tri-City area. You just don't
Yeah.
see that. So again, thank you for that opportunity. But how do you combat the stigma of being a young African American dad? How do you combat the stereotypes that we're not taking care of our kids, and I get that absentee fatherism
Yeah.
does transcend race. However, let's just call it what it is, that a lot of times it's African American men that are labeled as deadbeat dads. How do
Yeah.
you combat that?
The best way I can combat it is I personally, like I said, make an intention to be an active father. And where I have my son with me, whether he wants to go sometimes, whether he don't, kids do. But we combat that. I don't intentionally try to make a mental note of like, I'm gonna make sure I'm showing somebody I'm being a great dad. I just feel like it's my responsibility as a man first, and a man of God first, to make sure I'm taking care of my household, my son. And like I heard a quote the other day. It says, when you're good at something, you'll tell other people. When you're great, they'll tell you.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe we can use that same model and that same mindset as fathers. We feel like as dads, we always, like you said, I'm always working on myself, and sometimes I'm a little too hard critical of myself at times. But at the end of the day, I know my son loves me. I know he's provided for, and I don't just say that in a financial term. I mean spiritually,
Right.
emotionally. And I think as men, I personally take pride in making sure my son is emotionally whole. Because as men, especially African American men, um, you might be able to touch on this a lot, is we don't get a chance to show our emotions without being labeled or put that stigma on, and it's kind of
Absolutely.
hard. And I thought, like I said, when we met, and um, all the guys and stuff that showed up, and I was kind of able to, let that little bit of veil extra down. I was like, man, this is beautiful. This is like seriously, how many moments just when like they have mommy clubs, right? They have book clubs and stuff for mom. But other than sports or football games, how many dads just come take their kids to the park? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Uh, or
It's
just to
huge.
do whatever. And I think that's intentionally we have to be motivated by those things, and constantly pushing forward and better ourselves, and making sure our children are we're doing right by them, and then society's going to do the rest. They're going to talk and be labels. That's just what a lot of it, not just on social media, that's what the media puts out there. I
Mhm.
believe there's a lot of great dads of color, and a lot of their great dads, period. You know what I mean? Just like, not to not to knock anything, but Father's Day I believe was this upcoming week,
Yes.
and I ain't heard two ads about Father's Day coming up.
Right. Right. Well,
But Mother's Day,
It's all month long.
oh, it's all month long. But
Yeah, I'm in
that
complete
goes
agreement.
into it, I believe, a little bit too.
Absolutely. And something you touched on, and I'm glad, again, the spirit moving, because I was going there anyway. The emotional vulnerability portion, that's something that I'm big on. You and I have talked about that a lot. And that's something that I work with my son, especially on, because I grew up in a household. I don't want to use the term emotionally stagnant, but it just wasn't the status quo, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
I grew up in a man's kind of
Yeah.
mentality where you were rough and you were tough and you stood up for yourself and you pulled yourself by your
Don't cry.
bootstraps and you
Don't be
don't
a
cry,
puppet.
you do push-ups, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah, all those. Yep.
all of that, and I think, like you had said, because and I was talking to another friend of mine about this before. I think people don't understand that a lot of that in African American culture is because you didn't have the luxury of having the time afforded to
Mm,
you to be
yes.
emotionally vulnerable, right? There's
Yes.
always something you were taking care of your family, taking care of children, taking care of other people's children. I mean, in that
Yep.
culture, in our culture, it was very much a village mentality. So there wasn't
Absolutely.
time to be that. How did you find that within yourself as you began to grow? How did it become easier for you to be emotionally vulnerable and then move that and teach that to your son?
I'm like I said, being spirit led. I'll be honest with you. I wasn't always like that. It got to a point when I found Christ and like gave him my heart seriously and really was going after him. I was praying one morning and I seriously, and it happened about almost 3 years ago. Um, was praying about something to help me be a better dad. And God, he challenged me something fiercely, and it scared me. He said, Anthony, if your son was to turn out exactly like you, good and bad,
Mm.
would you be proud of him? And I was shook because I couldn't answer. I couldn't say. I would say honestly, I had to say no. And I was like, help me, God, help me how to do that. And I had to be honest with myself. I said, um, I need more people in my life. I need mentors. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know how to help be emotionally whole. And as I started getting my closer walk with God, and I started getting those things like life groups. That life group helped change my life. God sent one of our pastors, Pastor Scott, who not only was understand where I come from, the understand of my thought, but helped me being kingdom minded. On top of, he wasn't scared to ask me those tough questions.
Mm.
You know what I mean? As you know, being hold myself accountable. You know, and then giving models to look at. And also, I originally honestly didn't like to read, which is crazy. Went to college, graduated, but I also had to also stop being so prideful and have say, so I need some help in this area. So I need to start reading a little bit more. What does Scripture have to say about this necessarily? Um, and that's kind of like the mindset that I got from it. And I believe emotion, like I said, I grew up in that same type of mindset as, like I said, boys don't cry, man up. What are you upset about? And like you said, I don't want to call it emotionally stagnant, but it wasn't all the time healthy.
Right.
And I wanted, and if we talk about all the time, you know, off the podcast, we want to break generational curses. We want to make those changes. And one of the big ones I've always said I wanted to change is spiritually, of course, leading my children and generations from this point on in my house. You know, we're going to serve the Lord and we're going to follow God, but also emotionally, you know, how to properly express yourself.
Yes.
And that's really big. And I try to talk to my son about that daily. It's okay. Don't hold it all in. If you're upset, even if we're having a creative discussion, not even an argument, he might not agree with something I might do, like doing the dishes. Hey, go ahead and tell me. You know, there's a way to tell me. Don't be disrespectful or rude, because I'm not going to be the
Right.
same way to you. But at the same time, tell me how you really feeling, and we can talk about it. And that's what we do. And that's what we do in this, at least in my household, how we open that up. And I'm trying my best to, like I said, help change that narrative and to help him eventually. He's going to be a husband one day. And the last thing I want his wife or those family members is saying, he don't talk. I don't know how he's feeling. He
Yeah.
doesn't tell me anything, you know, and that started at home. So that's my mindset behind
Absolutely. And I couldn't agree more. I mean, that's something that I try to champion all the time is young men and even our peers. And you know, us. I feel like
that. Absolutely.
we, as this particular generation, are blessed with the ability to have that introspective position and start figuring out
Yes.
how to become emotionally vulnerable and transparent
Yes.
and communicative. But we also have responsibility now to teach others of our age how to do that as well. Do you find yourself in those fortunate positions to be able to counsel other guys? I know you and I talk quite a bit offline, but you know, I know that I find a lot of people and a lot of young men who ask me about the transparency and how to be vulnerable and how to let that emotion out in a constructive manner. Do you find yourself having those same conversations? Or
Absolutely. I have, of course, young men and stuff in my church outside of how people like men that will message me and, you know, say, and it's like I said, it's encouraging because you see the things that God's working on you on the inside without you having to explain nothing or tell nobody of why you're different. And some people see it.
Mhm.
And I love, like I said, I love it's one of my passions sharing like that with young men. Especially, you know, we have a lot of these things geared toward children and women, and those things are phenomenal, and we stand behind those with that. But at the same time, it's our responsibility now to help pass that on to other men. Whether sometimes some I've talked to some who are believers, some who are not. But again, like I said, we're continuing praying for those particular people. But like you said, I kind of find myself sharing all kinds of things that maybe God had put on me, maybe to think about. Hey, man, I've been there. Hey, maybe you look to read this. Hey,
Right.
I don't necessarily know the answer, but give me just a few minutes. I'll go find one for you, or we can go search it together, or just texting each other. I have one friend of mine I was talking to the other day, and you know, he texted me about accountability. You know, he's going through maybe dealing with an issue, um, issue with the flesh or something like that, and he'll message me, "Hey man, I'm feeling like this. Absolutely, man, call me real quick." And I'll, like I said, I'll try to get some call me. You know, and those are things like things that we need, and um, not be so no prideful about the holding on to those things. And I think that's what it really comes down to, because you're thinking, I don't want nobody to judge me. But once
Right.
you let that out, you realize so many other people are feeling the exact same way. You're like, you too? All
Yeah.
right, cool.
Yeah. And then you can start kind of, like you said, building those bridges and, you know, narrowing that gap between us.
Yes, sir.
And that's what it's about. I mean, we have to understand, and I think that's one of the things about us being men, and as we are trying to get better at being men, is even amongst each other, there's that ego and that pride and that kind of
Mhm.
one up mentality where, you
Yeah.
know, you don't want to share that you are struggling with something. You don't want to share that you've got an issue or something's going on at home, or, you
Yeah.
know, there's something personal happening with you, you know, because you don't feel like anyone's going to take you serious. And then I've seen
Really.
some cases that you've got people who one up people in a negative sense. But and what I mean is that you got people who like, man, you know, I'm struggling with X, Y, and Z, and they're like, well, I'm struggling with this, and it's like, okay, I
Cool.
get
I listen. Yeah.
yeah, and I'm like, man, you know, this is not the time to see who's got a worse life. We're trying to
Yeah.
figure
Yeah.
out.
We're both trying to heal.
Yeah, so you know,
Yeah.
and I guess what I'm going with that is I put a post out, I think 2 days ago, and I see a lot of negativity, and of course I'm sure you do too, and we've lived a lot of it as well. Is, you know, a lot of people are negative about just everything on the outside, right? All the external stimuli that we see, whether it's race, whether it's sexual orientation, whether it's you know, any other kind of prejudice that we've come to expect out of our society. And one thing that I was talking about in terms of accountability is how a lot of Christians take accountability and blend it with judgment.
Mm,
And
mm,
so I guess I'm curious about how you approach that, because everybody needs accountability partners, but holding someone accountable uh, isn't berating them for whatever's wrong. You know, it's
yeah.
okay. I understand. Whether I can empathize or not is different. I may sympathize because I may understand your emotion, but I might not have gone through that.
Yeah.
But how do you handle, especially maybe with your son or any other the younger men?
Yeah.
How do you deal with like the accountability from a place of love and concern and help?
I I think that's a great question. And I think it's Second Colossians that talks about um speak with like a grain of salt, with salt. That way you know how to speak with every man.
Hmm.
Meaning you have to be, if you're not personal, I believe if you're not personally ready to change, or really in your heart really want to change, um accountability kind of feels like an attack.
Yes.
And when you're talking to someone, when I'm talking personally to someone, I don't try to beat around the bush, but I can't say, hey bro, this is what you got to do. You know what I mean? I gently saying, hey man, I've never personally dealt with this, or I have dealt with this, and these are some of the steps that I have taken. Am I still walking through it? Yes sir. Am I still have I been forgiven about those? Yes sir. I said, but at the same time, like you said, accountability, at least when I talk to my other friends, is all right, what does the word say? You know what I mean? And I got to do that gently. And sometimes I had to pray about, and that's not, sometimes it's not even with Christians. It's not what you're saying, it's how you're saying it.
Absolutely.
A lot of that
And that
time.
goes for communication in general.
Yeah. And I think if how we present ourselves, and especially I think once, and I think one before Jesus started like when Jesus started his ministry, he didn't go in off rip and start telling people what they need to change and necessarily do. He became one and part of among the people. He was a carpenter. Am I correct? Am I correct? He was a
Yep.
carpenter. He worked in the communities. Before he was in the synagogues preaching and teaching, we know he did a little bit in his life. But before his ministry really kicked off, he was part of the people, meaning they knew him, they had a relationship with him.
Hmm.
And I think that's part of the thing is if you're coming at somebody who you don't necessarily have a relationship, we're all called to sow, water, and harvest. And different people are different parts of the process. So I don't know, me personally, when I speak to somebody, I gotta think, Lord, what position are they in? Is this am I just sowing? Am I watering? Maybe just giving some information that maybe Lord's already put on their heart. And is this harvesting? Is this time to help somebody to really dig in and dive in on helping change, especially with accountability? Because accountability is tough. Again, because I ain't gonna lie, sometimes I don't want to be held accountable. Let's be honest.
Just shut up and leave me alone.
Let me know. Look, I know. Look, I know I should be eating this at this time of night. I know it. Leave me alone.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
But at the same time, I really got to sit back and reflect. Like, okay, they wasn't coming out of a place of malice, or I have to really ask myself, was that intentional attack? And even if it was, I control my response to something like that.
Great point. Great point. Because the Bible says that the word is sharper than any two-edged sword. It's meant to pierce. That's what the word said. So it is going to make you feel uncomfortable sometimes.
Absolutely.
But it takes a certain level of maturity to recognize the difference. And we have to recognize, I think you made that point earlier, is that sometimes the emotional response that we have is because they're right. And it's our guilt, it's our guilt saying, I'm really not trying to hear that right now.
Yeah, right now. I was kind of hoping, like I said, we ever read the Bible? If you read the word, have you ever read something you're like, I'm not trying to hear that today. I was
trying to put that down. You know what?
What's Philippians talk about today? Like this is hard to digest. Like,
I'm gonna skip on over to Isaiah. I
need some encouragement today. I didn't come here for this, Lord.
Right. And that's the thing that we talk about with having human emotion. Is that you're going to have it. It's going to happen. I talk about that often because I was someone who was very angry. I was someone who lashed out. I was someone who fought all the time. I was that dude that flipped tables and chairs and lose my mind. Because I had no control. And the reason I had no control was because I refused to hold myself accountable for my actions and my reactions.
Yeah.
And so it's a moment in maturity when you realize that you can be as upset as you want to be, but how you handle it is where that sin plays a part in the scripture. We all know, be angry and sin not. It could be sad or sin not. Be depressed and sin not. I mean, you can apply any emotion to that. The point is you have to know how to react to certain stimuli.
The scripture also says too, I believe, when Jesus sent the disciples out amongst the sounds, and he told them, he says, if somebody doesn't, don't take anything with you. I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but if you don't take anything with you, and find somebody noble to stay with, and if they don't want you to stay with them, he says, shake the dust from your sandals. And like I said, or when you go speak to that city, if they don't receive what you're saying, shake the dust from your sandals and keep it pushing.
Yeah.
And I saw that scripture, and I read about it and heard about it and studied it, and it said basically it was like, hey man, that dust is the effects that's going to get on you. Like when somebody cuts you off, somebody says something out of the way, somebody even tell lies on you, like that a part, like it really does hurt, because you're like, well, I didn't do nothing to really deserve this. And you might be right. However, he says, shake that dust from your sandals, and that's okay. Let's keep it moving. He didn't say lash back out and burn the city down, put a curse on them. He said, hey, let's keep moving. Somebody else is going to receive that same message that you're giving out in the proper way. It's going to help change somebody's life.
Absolutely. And I always think about Ezekiel, because, Ezekiel was scared to death. And God was like, don't worry about the result. Don't worry about how it turns out. Don't worry about what they're going to do. You just go and do what I called you to do. So, we talk about being blessed by our obedience. And that's a clear example in both of those scenarios where you have to keep it moving, because we live in a social society, right? I mean, human beings by nature are social creatures, and we're going to interact as part of our condition that allows us to lead healthy lives.
Yes, sir.
And so we have to just figure out how to navigate those and realize that you're going to get your feelings hurt. You're going to get upset. People are going to talk about you or talk about your family, and and I guess words hurt. However, you do have the option to walk away from them. You do have the option to, not receive that. I know that when we talk about life and death in the power of the tongue. So, I try to be very cautious about my word choice and my inflection, because you can't take that stuff back when it's in the atmosphere. But as someone on the receiving end, it's your choice to receive what someone says about you.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it's like, with the social aspect of kind of what you're saying too, which is exactly kind of what piggyback off what you said, like growing up, if you don't have, like I said, emotional maturity or even wholeness, or even like grew up in that same mindset, a lot of these kids out here are dying because, like I said, you don't get that chance to even be yourself. like how you truly feel. And meaning is, oh, you like what I used to get. I used to be one of those same people. I wouldn't walk away from stuff. If you said something back to me, now I'm like you said, I'm ready to fight. I'm ready to lash back out because you took it as disrespect. And back then, even when we were growing up, oh, you let him talk to you like that? That was a big
Right,
trigger for me.
right,
Make you
right.
feel like a punk. And then those things like that. Now you're in a situation maybe you didn't even want to be in because you now feel prideful and you feel some type of way about that. And like I said, as I grow older, like you said, you ever been arguing with somebody or having a situation on the phone? It's just like a phone call. Why am I arguing with this situation, or why am I upset with this? I can hang this phone up.
Yep.
I choose to stay on the phone. I choose to be a part of those situations. And even now, it's like, you know what? It's not gonna matter. It doesn't. Am I gonna remember this tomorrow? It's gonna matter in 5 years. Is this person or this situation either gonna impact my calling, or can I, like I said, is this person even supposed to be part of my calling? It's just a road bump.
That's it. That's it. And that's probably something that we, as you and I are talking about this, something that I know that I don't, um, and I can't speak for anybody else, but just in my experience teaching in middle school with at-risk youth and alternative, I think that is something that we need to do more of as parents, especially as men, because we're trying to fight this. You have to defend your honor stereotype,
Yeah, yeah,
that we don't impress upon our kids that important fact that, is it going to matter tomorrow? Is it going to matter in 5 years? Is this going to affect your grades? Does this affect you on the court or the field?
yeah.
You are choosing to bring that in and allowing it to affect what you're doing.
Yeah, we absolutely have to. I try to do that to my son as well. It's like, sometimes I've caught my son saying it back to me. Daddy, look, why you worried about it? Did that what you told me? I'm like,
Well played. And then
way to use my own words against me, son. But I said, you know what? And I tell him, you're absolutely right, son. I said, you're absolutely right. And like, he's a smart kid. And but that's the same thing. And when he says stuff like that, remind me what I'm saying, it kind of breeds confidence in me. Like, okay, you're doing the right thing. Yes, and doing the right thing doesn't always feel good.
does not,
It does not feel good. And
all
sometimes
things are for the good of them that love him and called according to his purpose. It never says it's going to be good. It just says it's all working for your good.
it's always going to work for your good. I literally have that posted on my wall,
Yeah.
and I literally have to look at that every single day, no matter what the ups or downs. I said, God's working this out for my favor, right? It's going to end out according to his will and his purpose. Um, and I know I don't say that lightly, even in with like, sometimes we say those things like in America, Christianity is like, it's gonna work out because I'm gonna get blessed, I'm gonna get some money, I'm gonna have a house or whatever. It might just be good because my faith grew that day. You know what I mean?
That's
Um,
huge. I had to do that a lot when I got here. Trying to get back on my feet and reset and the point of my arrival. And, I did get frustrated, and I had to look around, and I have to walk outside often and just look at the ocean and remind myself, like, yeah, you're not where you are, where you want to be, but you're definitely not where you were, both
oof,
spiritually and physically, like
yeah,
geographically. I get to get out
yeah,
and look outside and see the ocean. And so I had to remind myself of that because I had my own fixated view of how I was trying to get blessed. Not
yes,
realizing that, like, just being here and being in a stable environment, being with my mother, being around friends, the physical atmosphere of being in the Caribbean, it was a huge blessing that I never saw coming. And so, even though a lot of things haven't happened yet,
yeah,
I
you're right. Yeah,
had to look at where I was, and I have to do that constantly because I think you do as well. People who are driven and have goals, we look so far ahead that we forget about the present.
presence. I have to tell that is one of my big things I currently have to pray myself through too. Is Anthony, like before I remember when I first had my son, and I feel like I blinked, and now he's about to be 11. And
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, like seriously, where did the time go? And I think because again, like you said, we're so driven, we're so goal oriented that sometimes we forget now. And when I'm at my table, I'm writing, I'm reading, and I'm studying and whatever. Hey, Dad, you want to play? Hey, man, you know what? Yeah, let's play for
Yeah.
just a sec. Like, you know what I mean? Like, not even like he's not gonna remember what I was doing at this particular time. Heck, I might not remember in a couple of months what I'll study or read. You know how that goes. But at the same time, he's always gonna remember my dad was there, and that's one thing I personally always wanted to be. I didn't want to just be a physical dad because you can do that, but be
Right.
emotionally absent.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think that's probably the worst kind sometimes. And that's one thing I just try to make sure I'm available to him to talk, to speak, um, as a dad. And like you said, just like you said, to remind myself, sometimes, like I said, I get up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, just go walk. Like I said, I might read study, but also just talk to God and just kind of think, Anthony, you're not like, look, think about where you was at least 2 years ago, just
Yeah,
2 years ago, let alone from 10 to 5. Man, God's working this thing out. Yeah, it's not the timing that you, but it's going to it's going to work out for your favor.
absolutely, man. And we have to keep that perspective. I mean, it's a daily thing, and I was thinking one of the quotes from the book that I'm writing, the title is called Baby Daddy Changing the Narrative. And one of the things as I was writing the book that I realized, and it's in there, is that, in trying to show my children the importance of hard work, I forgot to have them around to see it.
Oh man.
And
That's a little that's a
about being,
lovely quote right there. It's a tap. I like that.
that's
If I got tattoos, that'd be one.
I'm telling you, man, I appreciate it. But it reminded me about being present. Like you said, I blinked. My kids are, 10 and 11, and I'm like, holy cow, I feel like I've missed so much. And I know a lot of parents feel that way, but especially if you're sharing custody, it's a lot different.
It is.
And I don't get to see my kids, especially now, obviously with moving, but even before, I got busy with my own ministries and my businesses, and I took my kids a lot of places, but then I had to bail on my kids a lot of times.
Yeah.
And it was a hard couple of years where I was really beating myself up because I was working very hard, and they knew I was working hard, but I wasn't being dad. I wasn't being there. They'd come on the weekends, and half the weekend I'd be working on something, and we didn't get, like you were saying, I had to really start focusing on when I have them, I need to be focused on them. Everything else
Absolutely. And I truthfully, like I say, I know right now everybody sees me in the spot that I'm positioned that I'm in, but it wasn't like that. I had Isaiah when I was young. I was 18 years old. I was in college, and his mom, she sacrificed not going to college to help raise him. And I played sports in college, and that's part of my scholarship, and all that stuff was tied up into it. So if I took a step away from football, I could, and which was one of my dreams, that would have been sacrificed. But like you said, I felt terrible because, like I said, I wasn't a presence on there. And, me and her didn't really work out. But even when we had our outs, I told her specifically, I would never say anything negative about you, despite, we're best friends now. Like, she's awesome, or her husband, or children, beautiful family. And if you ask me, like I said, during that time frame, would I have seen it coming like that? Absolutely not. But I always told her, like, you sacrificed so much for me. And now that the roles have reversed, I said, let me do the same thing and help raise our son. This is my turn now. And I know how that really feels, feeling like you've missed so much, and not knowing, like I said, I remember missing his first words. I remember the weekend after I finished visiting, he took his first steps,
yeah.
like things like that. Now I see you have videos and all that stuff, but I like times that's why I'm like, feel like I'm grinding, but also I make sure to take those times to memorize those things. And just, like I said, it's just a blessing just to get to know your kids. And this is small stuff. What's your favorite color?
Yeah.
What's your favorite TV show? Just those quirks and stuff.
All of it's fantastic, and watching watching them grow and just develop into their own personalities, and
That's
having
wild.
their own desires and their dreams. It's a beautiful thing, man. It's and they're only kids once. And I think it's another one of those things that we hear often, right? Oh, you're only kids once, but it takes on a new meaning once you start looking at how you want to impact their lives. And I
Yes.
think that's something that we don't do enough of, as men specifically, is, how do I want to impact my children's lives? What lessons do I want to leave them with? What is my legacy for them when I'm no longer here?
That was, I think that was a quote this morning. It's a good father leaves an inheritance for his children and his children's children. And I don't think it just means financially. What are you, like you said, emotionally? What legacy? What did I want to really instill? The one thing I tell my friends all the time, and I talk to you about, I want to instill more than money, more than anything of those things, and I want him to be successful in all that he does, is wisdom. So
Yes,
you don't have to. So you miss those potholes that I stepped in, that I didn't have things. Please, son, if you don't hear what I tell them all the time, if you don't hear what I'm saying, please hear this.
that's
You
it.
know,
And
and those things like that. That's what I want to impart to him.
that's exactly it. My mom and I had a conversation a long, long time ago, and we talk about like the half life of wisdom. Um, And really what she was talking about, and it took me a little while to grasp the concept, but it makes a lot of sense now, is that the idea behind successful parenthood is that your children get to where you are in half the time it took you to do it.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that's kind of, and again, it's balanced, because you can't grind all the time. You got to be there and be present, but you want them to get to a level of emotional maturity and wisdom before, like you said, miss the potholes that you stepped in.
Oh yeah. And I see that a little bit. Like, and that's what encouraged me too with my son is like some of the stuff that he says or imparts to me. I'm like, man, he's so far ahead when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And then I was like, "Shoo, thank you, Lord. Like you've been hearing me. Thank you, Lord." I prayed over that. And like I said, all of a sudden it does too, it does take a community. You know,
Yes,
I'm
it
blessed
does.
to have you, people like you in my life. That I know if my son was out, I know you watch out for him. Like I said, he thought the world of you and Mr. Donovan. You know, when
Oh,
we gonna get back up it again?
yeah, we're going to
Uh,
have to make that happen, man. He said,
Absolutely.
they're still there. So, we'll talk more about that offline to get y'all linked
Of
up for
course.
sure. But yeah, and man, I tell you, it's a beautiful thing, because I know that I have not always been the right kind of example for my kids.
Absolutely. Hmm.
And so as I endeavor to become a better example for them and a more involved, a more present father, it's always warms my heart to see other young men be present in their father's lives, in their
Yeah.
children's lives, rather, especially young Black men, because it's really until you and I and Bakari and Shaka and we were all together, I had never had that experience before.
Same.
And so it was almost something so surreal. I don't have words for it, because it's just one of those things, when you watch historical documentaries of how Black communities were, and how even integrated communities were when they watched out for each other. And you just don't see that as often. And so to have that moment where, all the kids were, just enjoying each other's company, and we were able to talk, like you said, and kind of let our hair down, and just be open and be guys,
Yeah.
with each other was just something that you just don't see as often.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I, like I said, I thoroughly enjoyed that as well. Like I said, we'll continue to keep doing more events and different things like that. But just kind of like just exactly what you said, and the fact of like children grasping each other, we have to do the same thing. And even like I said, it seems when you watch those historical documentaries and stuff, it feels like there's like 100 years ago, but there's only 50, 60 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, I know somebody 50 or 60, right? And I know we talk all this all the time is I know we can be the change. Is being literally being mindful of I'm the, like I said, maybe not in the physical, I'm the next Dr. King. I'm next up. It is my responsibility. It is my duty. It is my privilege. Um, One of my friends said this quote to me, and it really had me thinking. I have it on my wall as well. It says, "What if you're the answered prayer to your ancestors?" You know, think about during the oppression of slavery, one of your ancestors praying out to God, "Please, just send somebody in my family to be the difference." And
That's it.
God said, "I'm gonna choose it to be you." And that's the way that I choose to try to intentionally try to live my life. And I, of course, have goals and aspirations, but at the same time, as a Black man, we have to help change, make that stigma on those particular things. Like I said, my son goes wherever with me, whether he wants to or not. But at the same time, even during worship and service, I want him to see what a real worshiper looks like. I
Yes.
want to see how you handle finances. I want to see how you actually work and not scared of not necessarily not being scared of conflict. And necessarily there's a way to handle it. And at the same time, being a man is handling their responsibilities. And sometimes I get kind of like people tell me, "You're such a great dad," and all that. I'm like, I'm handling my responsibility. I don't even see it that way. You know what I mean? My children will be reflection, and I only have one child necessarily, but your children are a reflection of what kind of purpose and what things that you value that you instilled in them. They're going to walk their own way at some point, not walk away, walk their own way.
Right.
But at the same time, the Bible clearly says, "Train up a child in the ways that they shall go, and they'll never depart." We love that verse, but we have to think the negative things that go with it. It says, "Train up a child as you go." So if you train that child up in bigotry and hatred, that's the way they're going to go.
That's it. And that's
So
part of breaking the generational curses, because
yeah,
that's your own prejudices that you're imprinting on your on your children.
Yeah, and maybe like I said, I believe through time it changes, but we all know somebody that maybe a grandparent that has that similar mindset. I know I've been around a few maybe aunts or uncles that you be like, man, I can't believe you really still think like that. But there's part of what they've grown up into and they've experienced
Right.
on the. But like I said, I can take it as a personal responsibility. And like I said, and you encourage me as well, of course, even with your post of that was active that you are as well as in the communities and Bakari's, the Shakas, my man Aaron, Chesco,
Yeah, man.
all the guys. Every day I said I'm inspired and I'm encouraged by all you guys of the way that not only that you handle yourselves, but the way that you walk with your families. Some I'm not married, but I know I have friends that are married. I have friends that are single, and I have friends, but each and every single one of them are delegating their responsibilities, which I love, and I'm so encouraged by. Even the days I don't feel like being a dad,
Hey,
even
yeah, yeah.
or even like I said, or even just feeling like just being and doing the things I know I'm called to do. But it's always so encouraging. Like I said, you definitely encourage me, brother.
Well, I appreciate it, man, and you do the same. I mean, it's iron sharpens iron, and that's what we have to do. And this is our time. This is our moment, and we can take up our cross. We can pick up that torch, and we can carry on the legacy, and we can be the change. We just have to continue to keep doing what we're doing.
Absolutely. And that was a scripture I read a couple months back, and I think what it kind of really helped charge and fuel that, I meant to say that earlier, was it was in Judges, I believe, chapter 6, the story of Gideon when he was called. Um, God called him, and Gideon was, he was said he was the least of his clan. He was nervous. He was like, I don't know if I want this, Lord. Uh, let's be honest with you. When God calls you, sometimes He do something big. You're like,
And you're
you
like,
sure you
I
need
don't know. I
it?
mean, you sure? Are you sure you didn't mean to call Cool Man? You
Yeah, but man,
you didn't
you were
mean to
talking. Look,
call
that's when you look
Bakari?
behind you. Like
You
you was
sure?
talking to him, right? You were talking to me. But the thing that stood out to me, and I believe that um, that was so powerful. He said when he called Gideon at night, later that evening, I believe, he says, "Go and tear down the altars that your father had built, or your
Mm,
fathers had built." And I believe, and to me, that spoke systematic. I believe that's God telling us, speaking to us directly. I know you didn't create racism. I know you wasn't a part of systematic racism. I know you'd even cause the problem necessarily. He says, but I'm calling you to go tear down those altars that people that have built in
right.
their hearts and built in their cities and built in their communities. And he says, because God is for you, He is for us. So
That's it.
meaning who can be against us? And those are the things that I take. I really believe, and I'm thinking the days I'm kind of nervous, the days that I'm a little insecure, because we get insecure sometimes.
Oh, yeah, completely.
But God's calling me. He said, go ahead and tear down those altars. He said, I know the people will come against you, but at the same time, they won't harm you.
No, not at all. And I think what we have to bear in mind, I think I sent you that internalizing oppression
Mhm.
um, PowerPoint, but I was thinking back when you were talking about the way we have to go about tearing down those mantles, and I was thinking about that we spend so much time trying to right the wrongs of history
Mhm.
as opposed to being focused on the future that we want to see.
Absolutely.
So I think that we get so caught up in the tearing down of our father's mantles that we never take the time to build new ones.
Oof, that's good.
And so I think that we should all be working toward the future we want to see. We recognize these things happen. We can't change them, and we can't fix them in terms of what has already transpired. But what we can do is look at the future we want to have and say, how do we make that real? How do we make that our reality?
And like I said, and I asked you a question as well. How do you think we should the best way to continue to keep going about that? What are some ways that you're doing those same things?
I think it's more of what we do. And that is, being in the community, showing that we care. It's having real solutions and not just abject ranting and opinions.
Yes,
It's
yes.
having our research. It's and I'll go so far to say, it is being articulate. We have to stand out. It is what it is, and
Yeah,
we have to be able to be heard. And in being heard, we have to be able to communicate effectively our position and our thoughts and our solutions.
I think you do a phenomenal job. Every time I heard the podcast, I'm like, man, I said, language over giving these words. I got to look, what's that? What does that word even mean? Got me feeling like I don't even read out here. I said, man, he is good. I said, man, so again, I said, the way that you articulate yourself, the way that you hold yourself, again, like I said, it doesn't go unnoticed. And like you said, I think that is a key factor of how we help change those narratives. And it's not just what we say. It's really, like I said, all about what you do.
And you know, you said that, and I think that's the most, probably, if guys, if you take nothing else away from today, it's that's it. We've talked about letting your conduct be your witness. And even though, yes, we have to be able to, as my dad used to say, hold court. You know, that means people, you know, hear what you say, but you've got to be, your words and your actions have to match.
Mm-hmm.
And they've got to be aligned with the walk that God has called you to be in. And I think if we can do nothing else but walk, then I think that we'll make a lot of change in the future of not only this nation, but of the world, and a better future for our children.
Yeah, small steps, long distances, and we can't. Bible touch all the time. Let's not get weary of doing good.
That's it.
I think that you've touched on that greatly, and that's one thing we got to keep focused on. That, remind ourselves every single day. And I think it's community and our work. The Bible says faith without works is dead.
It is.
Yes, we believe on the Lord. He says, yes, you're righteous with me. He said, but your work isn't for God, it's for our neighbors. You know what I mean?
We are called to serve.
That's exactly what we're called to do. And I think we, like I said, doing those things, going, like I said, going into those schools, and I'm looking to venture and do a little bit more of those. Even getting called out of your comfort zone at times. I think calls with those. But like I said, there's always people. I tell people, encouraging. There's better community out there. You just have to reach for. We have no excuse with social media, but also who you be wary of who you let into your circle, or who you let to speak into your life, necessarily. And that comes with wisdom. That comes with discernment. But at the same time, praying for those particular people as well.
Absolutely. And Joseph Broadwater said something to me one time that I'll never forget. And he said that if people aren't speaking into your life, they have no reason speaking about your life. And, you know, I know that you can't control that, but it's a mindset that, you know, if you're not speaking into my life, then there's no reason for me to entertain what you're saying about me.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I think that's a way for us to be able to de-escalate ourselves so that we don't fall back into that trap of you know, getting angry and lashing out and some different things that will happen.
I have to tell myself that, like I said, I literally have to out loud sometimes tell me that stuff out there, especially, you know, at work, even working with the public. You're like, they're not mad at me, they're mad at the situation.
Right.
It has nothing to do with me. Or even then, Anthony, you know, you catch yourself festering on it 2-3 days later for no reason. You're like, why are you really worried? And, you know, Spirit telling, why are you still worried about this? You know, and I'm like, so I think that's beautiful.
Most definitely. Well, man, it's been fantastic. Thank you for coming on. Like I said, the sun's going down on me, guys. So I didn't want to get up and walk away. But man, just tremendous man of God, man. I'm thankful for our connection. I did hear that you got to meet my man Philip.
Yeah. This past Sunday.
He told me about that. So I'm excited for those kind of kingdom connections and the way that God's moving in everybody's lives. Man, we'll definitely do this again very soon. Again, we'll talk offline about getting the kids together. Guys, as always, we thank you for your viewership. We thank you guys for listening. Anthony, thank you for being here today. Man, I get so excited to see more young men stepping up and trying to, you know, change the way they think so they can change the way they live and change their life and their
absolutely
walk. And you know, it takes time, guys. It definitely takes time, and it's not always easy, but it is always worth it. So guys, check out 60 Days of Casual Word on Amazon. Like, share, subscribe. You guys can donate to the podcast. Anthony, again, if you've got anything else you want to add to close us out.
Just again, I'm just so grateful if you have me on the show, man. Like I said, I've loved watching, I love listening. Mainly get a chance to listen on the actual podcast while I'm driving. But again, you keep sharing that word, you keep pouring into people, and I'll keep doing the same, man. Love you, man.
Love you, man. And thank you again, guys. Let's change the way that we think so we change the way that we live. Until next time, stay blessed.